Once upon a time, around 1980 I believe, a great company by the name of Namco created an unforgettable video game character simply called Pac-Man. However, he was eventually renamed Pac-Man because the name Pac-Man sounded too similar to a rather infamous word in the English vocabulary. He started an arcade game of the same name which involved nothing more than eating dots and avoiding multicolored ghost monsters that want to put him out of commission. The game was a massive success, so much so that a year after the original Pac-Man, an enhanced version of the game was made called Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man was actually not created by Namco, but rather the company that published the original Pac-Man in America, Midway. Yes, you heard right, Midway made Miss Pac-Man. Try wrapping that around your skull. Miss Pac-Man has you controlling a female variant of the original, still eating dots and being chased by monsters, but there were some tweaks in the usual formula such as wandering collectibles and additional maze designs. Just like the original, Miss Pac-Man was a huge hit, and was eventually adopted by Namco themselves, allowing for Miss Pac-Man to be featured in just about every other Pac-Man related game since. Case in point, Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness. Released on the exact same year as Pac-Man's 20th anniversary, Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness was released to coincide with Pac-Man World, a game involving Pac-Man's jump into third-dimension platforming. Unlike Pac-Man World, though, Maze Madness adopts and enhances the typical maze-like gameplay found in the older games, to a point where it feels like a meshing between the arcade gameplay and Pac-Man World's gameplay. But before we get into the technicals, let's start with the game's plot. The game takes place in 4 distinct locations that are said to be outside of the boundaries of Pac-World. You've got Egypt, the Ice Ages, China, and a haunted castle. Though if you want to be a legit snob, they're called Cleopatra, Crystal Caves, Pac-Ping Harbor, and Haunted Halloween. Hidden within these regions are the Gems of Virtue, named after almost every cliched word in the book: generosity, truth, wisdom, and courage. These gems hold the power that stabilizes Pac-World, and wouldn't you know it, an evil witch named Mesmeralda wants to get her wrinkly old hands on them because, well, she's evil like that, I guess. Knowing of this, through some unexplained reason, good old Professor Pac invents a machine called
the Pacometer! Yow! Here it is.
which will warp its user to the mysterious worlds that are inaccessible otherwise due to
Mysterious force fields.
Just as he puts the finishing touches, our female lead arrives to check up on the old-timer,
Come on in, my dear.
and he instantly bestows the duty of finding the gems and defeating the evil witch to her. Just before said witch takes over his mirror and uses it to pull the professor into her clutches. For those wondering where the hell Pac-Man was during all of this, well, he probably had better things to do. Upon immediately starting the game, you'll find that the game certainly lives up to its name. Miss Pac-Man is only allowed to traverse through maze-like roads, just like in the olden days. Her abilities are also pretty limited, as all she can do on her own is move around using a joystick or D-pad. The joystick is pretty easy on the thumb, but I wouldn't recommend using it in certain levels, mainly the Crystal Caves world. The buttons don't really do anything other than zoom in or zoom out of the playfield, so in a sense the game pretty much controls almost exactly like the arcade games. The only major difference is that you have total control over Miss Pac-Man's movement, so if you want her to stop on a dime, she'll stop on a dime. That's always nice. During your travels, you'll occasionally meet up with what looks to be a hologram projection of Professor Pac, who will give you details on certain gimmicks and hazards throughout a level. You'll also have a few quirky lines during these conversations, such as this one. If you're just replaying the game and want to speedrun it for kicks, get your thumbs ready because these conversations are almost always unavoidable. At least his projections are somewhat infrequent, so they don't really harm the experience much. In terms of gimmicks, there's actually quite a bit to discuss, seeing how they're what make the majority of the game. For starters, you have jumper pads which launch you to areas normally inaccessible on your own, and these rev-roll zipper thingamabobs which have Miss Pac-Man go off like a bowling ball, which is usually needed for taking out these pillars. You've also got the typical switches and buttons which activate a certain mechanism, and some other additional gimmicks that depend on the world you're in, such as flying carpets and slippery floors. One of the more common gimmicks in this game is block pushing, because hey, every other game out there has to have you pushing stuff, right? Well anyhow, the pushable blocks come in certain varieties, You've got the basic blocks, which help to open up pathways, ice blocks, which work very similarly to the previous kind but won't stop moving until hitting a wall, TNT blocks, which blow up after a specific time limit, and these skull and cross blocks, which are pretty much this game's equivalent to nitro crates. Of course, the one gimmick that makes the bulk of this journey is something that's been in the franchise since day one: the Pac-Dot mazes. Littered in every level are a couple of mini-mazes which are littered with Pac-Dots and ghost monsters. As always, you want to be sure to eat every dot in a maze and avoid the ghosts. And if they become too troublesome, just pop a good old power pellet down your pie hole and put the ghosts in their place. Not only do power pellets affect ghosts, but they also affect other ground enemies such as mummies, cavemen, dragons, and vampire packs. Man, Pac-Man only wishes he had power pellets this powerful. Wow, that sounded redundant. Just remember that the effect will wear off after a while, and if they touch you normally, you'll take a hit. However, in this game, you won't die from them instantly, you'll just lose some health. This game sports a health and life meter, and if you lose all your health, you will lose a life. However, I wouldn't worry too much about it, since this game suffers from New Super Mario Bros. Syndrome, in that you'll earn so many lives throughout the quest that getting a game over almost seems unlikely. But I digress. Usually these ghost maze sections are optional. However, I wouldn't suggest skipping any of them because making progress in this game means you have to find everything you can get your hands on. For example, every so often you'll come across these obstacles that lock your path until you collect a certain number of Pac-Dots. Unless you have all the dots you need, you'll have to backtrack and get some more. Not only that, but collecting all the Pac-Dots in a level will net you a star. Yes, stars. Pretty much like Mario 64 stars, but without the cute little eyes. You see, to make progress, you're going to need to collect a healthy dose of these generic plot MacGuffins. You earn these in a level by collecting all the Pac-Dots, all the food items, and achieving a high enough score. You can also earn one by beating a time trial mode the level offers. You'll also come across some occasional bonus levels in which you have to collect all the key items in a specific criteria in order to earn more stars. These bonus levels range from challenging to tedious to downright busted. The boat bonus level is the only tolerable one once you realize that you actually have to shoot torpedoes at enemy ships and avoid the ghosts that'll jump right into you. The castle bonus level gets repetitious because you have to beat it 7 times. However, a time only counts if you collect the fruit and not the heart. The bobsled bonus level is pretty much the Sonic 06 of this game, as the physics get really wonky when you spin Ms. Pac-Man's sled around and knock out the competition. Come on! I'd say just stick to getting stars in the normal levels. At the end of a world's final level, you'll come across one of the 4 gems that are just sitting there on their pedestals unguarded, and once you nab it and exit the level, you'll have access to the next landmark containing a gem. Once you gather all 4, you'll be able to take on the only 2 bosses this game actually has. First you'll have to go up against... Wait, that can't be. Is that... Oh my god. Actually, it's just a monster that belongs to the witch. They'll continue to eat up the solid ground, hoping to get a good munch on you. However, you have to outrun it by constantly running across the set pattern, taking advantage of the ice panels on the floor and avoiding the instant death panels. Once you've managed to clear his section, you'll face off against the witch herself, who you can only damage by utilizing the correct colored turds throughout the area. Be careful though that she'll hurl magic spells that'll really hurt. Once you defeat her, she'll drop a key which you can use to access areas blocked off by her magic cube barriers. The game won't end at this boss battle though. You'll still have to complete a few more levels, so if you want the real conclusion to the game, then by all means, good luck. So that's about all I can talk about with the game itself. So how does it hold up? Actually, I think it's held up pretty well. In the Pac-Man series of games, this one is a pretty unique little duckling, harboring elements from Pac-Man World and mixing it in with the maze-based style of gameplay. The only major issue I have with this game, aside from the lackluster bonus levels, is that the game's flow can be a little schizophrenic at times. There's moments when you can be constantly on the move, grabbing items, avoiding obstacles and all, and then there'll be those moments when you literally have to stop and wait for that one gimmick to go through, like waiting for the TNT to detonate. I guess it's all a matter of patience, but this is one of those games where I don't have much. The game also sports a multiplayer mode where you and your friends can battle each other in dot eating competitions, ghost tags, and bomb swapping matches. However, the mode itself is very undercooked and half-assed, so I honestly would just skip it if I were you. Though if you really want to try it at least once, at least you can do playing as Pac-Man. But otherwise, Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness is definitely an overlooked gem. Its gameplay elements are pretty solid most of the time, its graphics are a little dated but still look a little nice. And the soundtrack is pretty catchy, with personal favorites being Cleopatra and Pac-Ping Harbor. And the icing on the cake, it has a port of the original Ms. Pac-Man arcade game that you can play if you want to relax and unwind for a bit, which is always a nice treat. With all that said, I think I'll go ahead and give this game a 7.5 out of 10. For Pac fanatics, this is certainly a game to have in the collection, and unlike Pac-Man World, Maze Madness is actually pretty accessible. You can find a copy of it for either the PS1, the Dreamcast, or the N64. There's also a GBA version of the game, though I don't think I'd recommend it wholeheartedly. Stick to a console version. Also, before I wrap up, I'd like to bring attention to the fact that the game was going to have the sequel for the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube called Ms. Pac-Man Maze Madness 2. For whatever reason, sadly, the game was canned, and I think Namco should feel bad for that. I would have loved to have seen a sequel for this game. Oh well, unless Namco plan on bringing Ms. Pac-Man back for the recent revamp of the Pac-Man series, I don't think we'll ever see a true sequel to this game ever again.
It's like sad face here.
This has been QuikViews, and I'm Captain Reginald /JamesMan Extreme, and I hope to see you all for the next episode of QuikViews. Take care.